Well, folks, I've reached the point which all e-girls, posters, online people have reached at some point, which is I'm coming to you live from my car. I don't know, I was reduced to this. Where are you, Roslet? Smoke-filled room?
I'm in my usual location, undisclosed but beautifully crime filled, and also you might hear some birds. One side of the house is crime, and the other side is like birds and stuff.
True. It's the truth, the dialectic. And then midlev-mindyr. Am I saying that pronouncedly? What's your preferred pronunciation?
Yeah, sure. I originally picked that Pappy because it sounded like midlev-mindyr to me.
Midlev-mindyr. Let's do it.
You know, the traditional pronunciation would be mindyr, so either one's fine.
Okay. All right. Well, I respect your preferences here. So where are you broadcasting from? And by the way, you don't have to dox yourself. I just mean like your immediate surroundings.
Oh yeah.
What kind of chair?
I'm in my bedroom/office, sitting at my computer,
ready for action.
Sunny California.
There we go. And you are actually conducting a play test right now, correct?
That was the theory.
Okay.
We had one playtester who showed up before the official start of the playtest and then left before the official start of the playtest. So
nice.
I'm happy to let people portal into my turf anytime they show up, but at the moment, yeah, this is the only thing that's really
very nice. Okay, well that's good. Then we can kind of drum up some interest here and tell people what they're signing up for, and then maybe we can get some more people on there. So actually, can you just of course I'm young and I'm hip, and so I know everything about video games. But can you explain what a playtest is to Roslet Tanner, who's less with it?
It is true.
Well, to be honest, I don't know that I'm not like a real video game developer, but as far as I know, a playtest is simply getting some people to play the thing so that I can find out in what ways it's broken and also find out what things people especially want to see added in the future.
So it's like a I mean, not even an alpha test, usually I guess like an alpha test, but it's harder. It seems harder for like game-like things because it doesn't just have to work, it also has to be enjoyable, right? It's kind of like a different, there's another element there.
Yeah, and this is also somewhat of a different thing because it's not even exactly a game. It's like a social platform, which is in the style of a game.
Okay, so that's probably a good segue back to the beginning where we should have started, which is can you just go ahead and give us the kind of like high-level overview of what turf is and what it kind of aspires to be?
Yeah, so turf is a program that lets you walk around in a 2D world and talk to people, and then you can also build that world yourself and create connections from your world to someone else's world with their permission, and walk through portals and explore different little worlds people have created. And the idea is that eventually people will build out lots of interesting stuff on here and be creative with it, and a world will emerge of interconnected little turfs that you can just explore, walking between and meet new people and talk to them. We're going to add voice chat eventually. Right now it's just text chat.
Okay, so now it's just text. So it's sort of like, but this is all on Urbit, right? So like, can you explain the kind of connection between turf and Urbit, like how the things relate?
Yeah, so the great thing about Urbit is each person's running their own computer, which means, in our case, each person is hosting their own turf, meaning your turf belongs to you in a way that it couldn't on any other platform. That data is on your computer. You can keep running the program for as long as you like. There's no server somewhere that if it goes down, your turf disappears. It's your server. If your server goes down and loses all its data, then your turf disappears, but hopefully you can back that up. But it's a level of ownership over your space that isn't available anywhere else, and therefore a level of resilience to various types of censorship or data centers collapsing. And the idea is to empower the user to customize their turf in all kinds of deep ways, app integrations to really make your turf work how you want it to and operate on your terms.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask. Is so right now, the kind of closest thing is something like Gather, right, or Gather Town, or however people pronounce it. Can you kind of just explain for people who don't use Gather Town or don't use Gather, like what's the appeal of such a thing? You know what I mean? Like how do people use this kind of tool now? And then, yeah, you kind of alluded to that, but like how would the Urbit version be different and better, I'm assuming, than the Gather Town version?
Yeah. So Gather is very focused on the co-working use case. So, they give you a virtual office, which, the mechanics of it are very similar to what Turf does. And Gather was the original inspiration for Turf in a way, or it definitely shaped the vision. But they're very focused on giving teams a place to hang out and enable spontaneous interactions between team members so that you can feel like you're working in an office, even you're working somewhere very far away from your coworkers. And so the Urbit community has been using this. There's a hacker house in GatherTown, people like to hang out in. And with Urbit, we can do, I think, everything that GatherTown does, but we can also have this other element of, creativity. The hacker house is a place that people can go and hang out, but, as a regular user, you can't expand it in any way. It's sort of fixed to whatever the host has decided it should be. In Turf, you can build your own little clubhouse for, your own particular group's needs, and then have a portal to a more centralized hacker house that everybody knows about. And so it allows you to sort of expand that functionality out in all directions, as well as opening up a whole new world of integration with Urbit apps and just general sort of interactive experiences.
Yeah. So this is good though, because I was gonna my controversial take is I'm not a GatherTown. I'm not a fan of GatherTown myself, because my planning was to start a fight with you, Midlev, but I'm not gonna do that. But I'm sort of like a little bit. I'd like someone to steel man, why they like that kind of experience. Does that make sense? Because like to me, I'm like it just doesn't resonate with me. But I think you mentioned this a little bit. But can you, or maybe if someone on here is a GatherTown? I mean, I know a lot of Urbit people are actually very use the GatherTown quite a bit. So can you or somebody else maybe like pill me on GatherTown? Like what do you like about it? What do you think is like innate? What does it enable that is hard otherwise?
Well, I haven't used it really all that much, but what I do like about it is just the core feature that it has that makes it special to me is the ability to run into people without setting up something specific. It's a place where you can go and people hanging out there, and you can just start up a conversation without saying, "Hey, let's start a call." You just walk up to them. Yeah. And it's different from just a chat room where people are hanging out, because there's this level of presence where you can see that someone's there and you can ping them when you walk up to them, versus just posting a message into the void of some public chat room or a private chat room.
Interesting. So it's like a more serendipitous, basically, to see people and just kind of let it come naturally. That's interesting. But I think
I think you can also, sorry, poldec, but is there also the ability to sort of say, yeah, I'm in here right now, please don't bother me, but I'm here, check back in a minute. Like there's a little bit more, like just being there doesn't mean you're available at that moment, right? So it's even a little more flexible.
Yeah, there's a busy mode. You can set your status to busy, and then people can't ping you, but you're still sort of in there.
I'm not sure if any of you guys, let me gather around, kids. Let me tell you a story about the old days of Urbit, which is there was in the original chat of Urbit, there was a command you could, I forget what it was, but a keyboard shortcut. And this is when the chat was just in the terminal, right? There was no GUI, no nothing. And it would just say, if I ran it, it would just say poldec-tonteg remains quietly present. So it's just like this like extremely basic way to just be like a presence indicator, right? Which is like that someone has been active recently, but you had to manually do it. So poldec-tonteg remains quietly present. is how it used to work. But I mean, it's a great feature, right? Because I'm here, but I'm not talking. It's like lurk mode, basically. So you don't use it though, because you're presumably working on your own. You're in your own turf, as it were.
Well, the thing is, I do like GatherTown, and I've used it a little bit, but generally the times when people are in there is like working hours, and when I'm actually working, I find it very distracting to be in GatherTown.
Ah, yes.
So
yes.
I don't find myself in there that often.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I do want to get in there more.
Sarlev, were you going to say? Did you want to say something pro or anti GatherTown?
I'm pro GatherTown. I'll speak up as a Gather.
And for those of you that are listening and don't know Sarlev Sarson, he's a very salty, opinionated man. So if he's a booster, then that means something.
GatherTown is on the list of like 3 pieces of software that I actually enjoy in the modern era.
Wow. Okay.
Urbit, Figma, and GatherTown. Everything else is horrible.
Okay, all right.
But like those are
not mind body, not
pieces of technology that bring me joy. And I say this as someone who has worked in an office but always had a remote capable presence where inevitably someone's calling into a meeting or this, that, or the other thing. And Gather manages to land all of the great parts about working in an office, or like most of them, while clearing a bunch of the hurdles of working online. And like the thing that I always hated about working in an office is the shoulder tap. Like here,
yes.
Let me talk to you about something for 3 minutes and totally distract you from whatever it was that you had to do.
Yeah.
You know, like Gather, it's like I can be in Gather, I can be working on some things that's like not deep work. And if someone needs to like swing by and ask a 3-minute question, boom, great, do it, easy, done.
Yeah.
And you can have those like close to high bandwidth and just like, you know, off the cuff interactions that don't depend on setting up a 30-minute meeting, you know, 4 weeks in advance and like all this shit. It's really annoying about being in like Google Meet world.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that because I think that like I've been trying to transition to a just call me bro mode where I just basically like, because I was reading a book called The Art of the Deal. Some of you might have heard of this book. And he talks about how Donald Trump, PhD Esquire, talks about how he was able to field like 50 to 100 calls a day, very few of which were over 3 minutes long. And I'm like, you know, that's actually just talking to people when it comes up is clearly the ideal way to like share information. But the flip side is exactly what you said, is Stu, is like you're also, you know, like I call people, it might not be a good time for them, then they need to text me back. And, you know, it's like it's good to have that kind of like presence, like almost like when you go get Brazilian barbecue and it's like you flip over the little like green red thing. It's like questions, no questions. Okay, I can see that. I'm presuming Turf would like also provide this kind of thing, right? Midlev?
Yes.
I've also been a champion of the Gather on Urbit thing because I think it also takes this step of making it yours. Like there's all these little things about Gather that drive me insane where I'm like, I can't change this. I can't add my own little pixel.
Yeah.
I can't, you know, have my apps like
well, so what's interesting, and I think it's like so just in the nitty gritty, if you like start a Gather, whatever it's called, space office, you basically have to have special permissions to be able to like, I don't know, make a statue of some, like, I don't know, make a waterfall or like all this stuff. You kind of need to be elevated correctly. You can't really just, everyone can't do whatever they want. Is that correct? Or am I wrong?
Even like the whatever you want is whatever you want within the context of what the Gather team wants.
So they don't even let you like upload custom artwork?
Yeah, no. I mean,
no Gadsden flag. That's what you're saying. You try to put the Gadsden flag up, and you got.
But you can get other flags.
Yeah, there are other flags available. Yes, it's true. So don't worry, folks. But that's a really good point. So I didn't even think about that. So like you can customize GatherTown, but kind of within the palette of pre-selected things, right? And so is the idea, Midlev, do you think that we could move to a thing where your turf could be like infinitely, I mean, within some sort of like constraints, like reconfigurable? Is that I mean, like, I guess that's the question. Like, what are the constraints then on the turf in the long term view?
I mean, the constraints ideally on the turf would just continue to diminish in the long term, as in like the more developer time I have to put into it, like the more power I can give to users to change stuff. I'm hoping to add custom item artwork where you can just upload a PNG as a new item within the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And that'll really spruce it up, because right now there's a limited item set because it's just me trying to add items.
Yeah.
So I want to add custom items. I want you to be able to, have your own item animations, position them however you want within the tile, set up custom item effects so that, if you interact with an item, it can do a certain thing.
Holy
At some
shit.
point,
Okay.
it would be cool to have...
This is amazing. This is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so right now the two items that do things are portals and tunnels. So portal, you step on it and it lets you go to a different turf. A tunnel will just transport you to a specified square within the turf. Mm-hmm. So it's just a fun little thing. But yeah, I want to add like arbitrary item effects, basically. So you step onto a tile and it like triggers something, or like you push a box and it moves, or and eventually it'd be cool to break free of the tile grid. But I think it's a good framework to build within for a while.
Yeah.
This square grid, but eventually, I could see a world where we have, you create your turf, you choose whether you want it to be a pixel grid or like a 3D world.
Yeah,
like a Minecraft thing, or...
That's really interesting. I mean, it's an interesting...
Theoretically, there's a lot of options.
It's an interesting problem because, like, you're providing like a very stripped down, essentially almost like game development environment, right? For people, meaning that like,
yeah,
like I mean, because you're... So for those of you, let me paint a picture for those of you that haven't seen it. It's kind of like, it looks kind of like Game Boy Color is kind of what I think about it. It's kind of like pixel art. So what's interesting is that you can use all those like sprite animation type things that those classic games use, right? But you also don't want to expose the user to like too much complexity, because also you just, they'll get overwhelmed, right? So you kind of have to, you're kind of also creating a programming language / environment at the same time, right? I mean, when you're doing this stuff, that's really cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, in the ideal world, this would be like an entire like game maker or like RPG maker or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
that runs on Urbit.
Yeah.
But that's probably quite a ways down the line.
Yeah, because you can imagine it getting super complex, right? It's like everything could have its own little sound, right? You can imagine it being like when you pick up a certain thing, it makes a little blunk or whatever, all the various video game sounds. And so it's like, yeah, you could really go deep on this. It's really cool. So what do you think? I think you've alluded a couple times to like the ability to extend this. So right now, a lot of the stuff you're talking about is kind of like within turf, right? Like you're meaning like it would trigger different animations within turf. But are you thinking about adding extensions so that different elements of your Urbit could be interacted with as well? Or like different applications?
Absolutely.
So what's the vision on that? Yeah, give me.
So the vision, well, for me, one of the big appeals of the vision of Urbit is that all your applications can talk to each other and interact with each other more easily than they could in Web 2. And I feel like Turf is a great vehicle to explore that, because it could be a place where people hang out, and then, we can provide windows through different items into different apps. So like you can have areas of a turf that are gated by whether you're in a group or not, or have a certain role within a group. Or, you could have a whiteboard item on a wall, and when you interact with it, it brings up this view into a whiteboard app that's running somewhere else on Urbit. And you can draw with people there, or like you interact with an item and it adds you to a list, or there's like a button in the turf to add someone as a pal. There's also options for like advanced game mechanics where people have an app that stores some game state that they want to include in their turf, and then they set up items in their turf to call that app, so that app can keep track of game state and then express that by manipulating things in the turf. And you could theoretically implement like a chess in turf that way or something like that.
Yeah, interesting. Like, that's so cool because I'm thinking like for the first thing you mentioned, I mean, so each turf is owned by a planet, right? Or a ship. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or hosted on a ship, right?
Yeah.
So every turf has like a Pat P that owns it. And so you could probably just like have a button in the turf that's like when you step on it, it adds that person as a pal, right? I mean, and that would be like the simplest, like own the owner of this turf as a pal.
Yeah.
That's really,
that'd
really
be a very
cool.
simple way to start.
Yeah. And then you could have like a tic-tac-toe game. This would be an example of within the turf, right? I mean, and I mean, I'd imagine that one way this could go, right, is that when someone develops a new app, whatever that app may be, right, they can write a web UI, they could write a command line UI, but then they could also basically expose some things for turf integration. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Like they could go, here are some sprites you could use and stuff?
Yeah, the dream is that there's some sort of plugin system where there's like a standardized way for them to specify, okay, and this is how my app can be interacted with by turf or by things that use a similar interface as turf. And then hopefully, ideally there's some sort of like plugin layer on Urbit that makes all this a lot easier, but there are ways to do it sort of turf specific. Archetype, I believe, wants to support some of this stuff. I don't know when that will pan out, but we've talked before. I don't know if you recall, but we had a conversation about a plugin system that I wanted to build, and then you suggested I build something people would use instead, and so we talked about turf. But I think a plugin system like that would be really useful for making these kind of item interactions easier for developers to support.
So I have a question, just like for my own curiosity, like going back, it seems like, everyone comes to Urbit for their own reason. We have a lot of things in common, but not everything. So it seems like you're primarily like, or maybe not primarily, but, you're coming from like a sovereignty perspective. Can you just tell us a little bit about like your, like how you found, like what's your overall background with Urbit in general? And then how did you start to like develop this concept?
Yeah, sure. So I guess it was end of 2021, a friend of mine who had some friends who were into Urbit asked me how much I knew about Urbit, and I was like, what's Urbit? He was like, oh, that's where all my smartest friends are, or that's what they're all excited about. And so I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And, I've never been like a huge privacy nut. Like I've never been super paranoid about that stuff, but the thing that really got me interested in Urbit was the ability to sort of be free from sort of all the incentive structures behind the things we use today, and having all our apps work together and escaping the ball of mud that current web development is, because I've been working as a web developer for a number of years and experienced the pain of that. So I had the idea for something like turf pretty early on, but I didn't decide to start working on it until about a year later, because I was like, oh, that sounds like a really big project. So I just did a grant for the UF Astrolabe, and then this year thought about it some more and talked with Poldec. I told him about the idea, and he said that Josh at the foundation had a very similar idea that he'd be interested in helping me, sort of flesh out some more. And so he's been advising me on the project. And yeah, it sort of just came about because it seemed like a really cool, fun thing to build. And the sovereignty aspect and like owning your own turf, I think is valuable, and I think it's one of the main things that sets apart turf from something like GatherTown. But to me, it's not the thing that makes it really exciting. What makes it exciting to me is the prospect of a huge, interconnected, user-created world where there's all sorts of interesting stuff to discover.
Cool. Hey, is Poldec still here?
You may have driven into zone of no service.
A zone of no return. Well, I think, if Poldec were here,
He's
he would,
here. Oh, yes.
he would just.
He's here.
Oh, okay. There we go. I was
They're
just gonna
attacking me.
ask for
They're
questions.
attacking me.
What's attacked? Oh, that you're being attacked. You're under
being
siege.
I was going to say, that's a great movie, by the way. I was going to say, Midlev, can you tell people also, I feel like this whole plugin / extensibility thing, you also did Monkey, which I really, really like. And I actually suggested, someone asked me on a podcast the other day, what is your lesser known app that you love? And I said Monkey is one of my favorite apps. So can you actually talk about your experience doing that? Because I think it kind of leads in. It's like just a thing that you've been working on, this problem, Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to do something that would help Urbit apps be more interoperable, actually fulfill deliver on the promise that Urbit has of all your apps can work together. Because currently, it's like if you want to do something where your app uses the data of another app, you have to go read their code, or if they have it, documentation, and figure out, what folks do I need to support to do this thing and this thing. And then if you actually want to display your data inside another app, you have to contact the developers and ask them to support your particular use case in their app, which is a huge hassle and doesn't happen very often. So I had this idea for an app called Monkey that goes in and patches stuff and sort of allows you to tack on your own code into someone else's app through, listening on the web, on the web server port of the Urbit ship and just adding in some code that runs. So in this aspect of it works, and you can try it out if you want. So I made a little patch for Astrolabe where if you have Monkey installed and you have Astrolabe installed, when you go to groups and click on someone's profile, then there will be a little button in there that says view in Astrolabe. So you can click on it and it'll take you to this view where you can see their information about their ship. And it's just listening for the HTTP requests and inserting some code to display the button. And then I also wanted to expand Monkey's capabilities beyond just inserting code to actually defining an API, allowing apps to define APIs for how other apps can interact with them. So for example, if groups were to use this version of Monkey, which never got built, then they would register some series of pokes and subscriptions that a plugin would have to support, and then this plugin could, view that documentation and implement the flows that are necessary to get their data into the group's app, and then they could include a file on their desk that Monkey can read that just says I support this plugin, and here's the information about how I support it, and then groups can just call Monkey instead of asking the individual app and say, hey Monkey, give me all the plugins that are registered for my app and all the information associated with that, and then Monkey can sort of collect all of that from the different apps that have registered and deliver that to groups. So with that system, to support a sort of plugin in your app, you'd only have to do it once to plug into Monkey, and then Monkey could plug other things into that.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I was saying on this podcast that you're right in that the composability sort of narrative of Urbit is still, it's missing some parts, like you said. I mean, it's not like you have to ask Steve Jobs Tim Apple to do something for you, but it's you still got to ask the developer of whatever Urbit app you want to incorporate your use case. You can't do it yourself really, or it's hard to do. And so what I liked about the Monkey approach is that it's that should be the default, is I should be able to mangle my Urbit UI however I see fit, even if it's this kind of code injection, because this is the model that early Chrome extension, which is called Grease Monkey, right, used. And I think they eventually pulled that from the extension store, but it's I think it's really good because it allows people to kind of seize control, take control back. And I think, but it's interesting to think about how the turf model might even be better in a lot of ways, right? Because you'd have this kind of built-in, especially if you can get the turf UI really nice, or really just, and by nice I mean simple and specified and whatever, and you can make it that making UIs for your apps in Turf might be a totally, a common way to do stuff, which would be super cool.
Yeah. Well, ideally, I don't want Turf to be the hub of plugins. I want Turf to be making use of a plugin system that people can use for whatever they want.
Oh, yeah. But I think it's like, but I mean, you could imagine a world wherein your Turf could be a program, basically, right? I mean, it could be, you could imagine running your entire Urbit from your Turf, right? It could be your little kind of command center. And that's really, really an interesting, like, I'm not sure that people have like thought seriously about how cool, it's like maybe other things are doing this, but having something where it's essentially like a game type interface, but as the main interface for an application, that's not, the game. That's a different application. That's really interesting. I think it's lots of cool stuff to explore.
It's definitely a possibility.
I was thinking you could bring back, remember the weather app? Maybe some of you, this.
Oh, yeah.
Urbit had a simple weather app way back in the day. It's like you could bring that back in Turf, right? Just like a little, you could have like a little flat screen, thing in your Turf that displayed the weather.
Or you could have the weather like raining down on the Turf if it's raining, or like have clouds going over.
Like there's so many fun little things like that are kind of cute, but they're also like a demonstration of like a deeper, more powerful thing. So there's lots of cool stuff you could do there. Okay, yeah, I think Roslet was about to open up for questions, I believe, when I came back. So yeah, if anybody has questions for Midlev about Turf, they're interested in knowing more about Turf or knowing more about his experiences with the accelerator program, go ahead and request to speak. I can add you.
Actually, I have beef.
That's what you guys get if you don't ask questions. You just get Roslet. Is it beef with me or beef with Midlev?
Midlev.
Oh, okay.
So I saw your tweet that, and I wanted to ask what you meant by the elite inside circle. The elite.
Yes, so
I found it hurtful.
That's for whoever is in my group on Urbit. They're the elite inner circle. Okay. So it's very easy to join.
Felt like it was us. Oh, okay. All right.
You're welcome to join.
I want to be a part of something that's elite.
It's a public elite, but you have to get on Urbit first.
Got it.
Yeah. So wait, so what is your group actually, Midlev? That's a good.
It's called Turf. It's poster hoster midlev-mindyr /Turf. Okay. So I can put that in the chat if you like.
Oh my god! Did you see what Narnaim Ristem just posted? This is amazing. Is that a gold AK?
Gold
pixel AK.
God, this is genius. Good.
I'm going to correct you there.
AR? Is it an AR?
What is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a scary AR-15.
This is one of these assault rifles I've heard so much about. But what's going to be amazing is the pixelated. The fun thing is that the constraint that it be something pixelated is, of course, will make everything sort of like cuter. You know what I mean? It's like you have like you can have like a ICBM, but it'll be a cute pixelated 2D ICBM. It won't be a scary real ICBM. It's good. I like it. Yeah. So okay. Well, I have some follow-up questions, which is I'd like to know kind of your experience thus far with with the accelerator program and kind of how you felt it was going, and just give me your thoughts on that because I haven't talked to you since you started.
Yeah. So we did an in-person kickoff in California at the beginning of August, which was really great. Got to meet most of the people who were involved and work on pitching and refining our ideas and sort of planning for the future along various aspects of like improving the product and making sure we know who our customers are going to be and coming up with how we're going to make money and then how we're going to measure statistics to prove that we can make money and stuff like that. So that's all been really helpful. We also got a little bit of guidance on how to start creating a corporation and all of the legal stuff involved with that, which was exciting.
That's the real fun stuff. Yeah,
that's all necessary. Fun stuff. Yeah, for sure. We have meetings from time to time, talking about our goals, and then we have guest speakers, which it's nice to hear the perspectives of people who have done sort of the venture thing a number of times and hear what they found to be helpful or what they found to be like traps that you have to avoid.
Yeah.
We had one with Brian Crane of Chorus One, and there were some really good insights from that. The importance of delegation, which is something I think I'm going to be struggling with a bit, but that'll be it.
Well, it's funny because that's like a hard transition, I think, for a lot of people. I mean, that's the thing is that building something that's good is like only a portion of what you got to do to get it out, and it's like not killing yourself and not overworking and making good use of other people's, skills is such a huge part of it. So it's like, you got to learn that, but it's not a lot of people, it's not a given that people can do it, so it's great that you guys are talking about that. Very nice.
Do you think like the difficult part of that will be just sort of like trusting other people with sort of, your creation? Is that it? Like, what do you think will be the hardest part?
Yeah, I think that's the main thing for me. If there's a guy I'm doing some work with right now, he is responsible for the fact that when you see players move around in the turf, they actually follow the path they took instead of just interpolating from the place where they started to place where they are. But yeah, just trusting someone with the code, because I've been working on this by myself for a while and trying to keep everything like not necessarily pristine, but making sure I know exactly what's going on, and the systems that I feel like are really crucial, that they be working in a certain way, making sure that those are actually operating the way I think they should. So yeah, adding someone new to the mix is just a little bit tricky, because on one hand, I feel like it's important to make sure that the technical, it's technically going to do all the things it needs to, and it's not going to cause us problems down the line, but at the same time, I can't be fully like reading every single thing that someone contributes and, making suggestions and like editing everything, at least not in the long term.
Yeah. That's the hard thing to like really. Yeah, I mean that's hard though. I mean, because it's like, have you worked on something before that you started, and then you like got other people involved later, or is this a new? You know what I mean? Like, or have you always been a solo dev on your own stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked in teams before, but I've never worked in a team on my own project really.
Yeah,
the closest was a project in high school. It was technically a group project, but I wound up doing all the coding for it.
Yeah,
because like my friend was willing to also do coding, but I was better than him, and he was like, you just do this. So I was like, all right, this is fine.
I mean, it's definitely one of those things where it's just like it's creative, right? It's just it's kind of like painting 3/4 of a painting and then helping someone else, handing it off to someone else. It's like that's hard to do, I think. You get better at it.
One of my favorite things to harp about is how, most managers of people are shitty and very bad at it. And I mean, it's two things, one, that they're not taught, but also like, that's not what they want to be doing. They want to be doing the creative work. And then, it's just like sort of the way things work that you kind of have to, that's the trajectory that most people have to follow. And I think like, it's a really hard thing where you maintain some kind of sense of involvement in the creative side, but you also like really do need to teach yourself. And like, the program that, the accelerator thing, like it sounds like they're giving you really good resources, and you're always going to need, everyone, we all need like mentors. But I think it's really tricky, like not to be understated how hard it is.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Some of the best managers are actually, I mean, it's funny because I think when I was young, I'd be like, oh, this manager doesn't understand what's going, they don't understand the intricacies of the project type thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think I've kind of like come somewhat full circle on that, because oftentimes when you have managers that like really want to be doing the thing that they're overseeing, like imagine you an engineering manager, but he really just wants to code. Like he doesn't actually want to manage. Then it's like they're actually worse because they're like metal and like they kind of want to do, it's like there's something good about someone who's just like sort of objective, if that makes sense. Like they just are like kind of they understand what it needs to do in the end, but they kind of, because they're not like in competition in some ways. Like, I mean, when you have a manager that kind of wants to be a contributor and they're kind of like jealous or whatever, it's like there's lots of different ways it can go down. So it's like, it's definitely a thing that you just got to get good at, and that just happens with, you know, I mean, ideally, you know everything about the work, and you can still restrain yourself from meddling, right? It's like that's the ideal, but it takes a lot of doing, for sure.
Yeah, I've had a manager who was primarily an engineer, and what wound up happening was he just didn't do that much managing.
Yeah.
And so he was great to work with, but like we really suffered for not having someone managing the team.
Yeah. That's usually what happens when it's like you wanna promote someone, but you only really can justify paying an engineer so much, so you make them a manager nominally, and it's just I mean, so all this stuff just is like the nitty gritty of actually doing a project is. I mean, that's why I'm really excited about the accelerator, because I think that's kind of like what it exposes people to, because it's not something you necessarily get just by being good at programming. It's
for sure.
You need some outside help. Yeah,
imagine my surprise when I discovered that building a company on Urbit is not about programming.
Yeah. What's about programming, and then all this other stuff that you did not want to do. You thought so well.
It is also about programming, but
you do still have to program. But it's like, that's just the beginning, which I think is, and that's why I think it also makes you appreciate people, like who were able. I mean, whatever someone thinks about like Zuckerberg and these guys is like they like were able to kind of basically reinvent themselves, as the founder and CEO of a company. And that's really actually very hard to do. And it's why you see a lot of founders just kind of like get things off the ground and then hand it off, because they know they're not good at like, day-to-day stuff. So I don't know, makes you appreciate people's skills too.
Yeah. I'm definitely considering adding a CEO to the team at some point to take over that role, so I can do more programming.
Yeah, it's good just to know yourself too. I mean, that's the thing. You're just got to know what you like and what you don't, right? I mean, it's totally fine to not do that stuff. And yes, for those listening, I did say something positive about Mark Zuckerberg. See? I'm controversial, dude. I'm controversial. All right.
You're a true edgelord.
Exactly. Truly, I mean, edgelording 2023 is like I'm posting about golf. I'm saying positive things about Mark Zuckerberg.
You're a granddad.
Exactly. I am a granddad. I'm an edgy granddad. Let's see. Someone else going to speak? Evangelist.
Hey guys.
How you doing?
Hello.
I had a question. Was there like a super important lesson you learned while starting up and learning Urbit and getting into the whole ecosystem?
I mean, to be honest, I'm still pretty early in this process, but I would say one of the most important things I've learned is building on Urbit specifically. If there's something you're confused about, you need to just ask people, because a lot of the knowledge isn't available to read anywhere. It's just in people's brains. So learning to ask people and who to ask is pretty key. As far as the business side of things goes, a friend gave me a book called Sell Like Crazy, which talks about how to market and how your product is useless if you don't market it. And so that's been a good lesson for me to start learning as I think about preparing a actual money-making strategy.
What was that book again?
Midlev? Sell Like Crazy.
Sell Like Crazy. Okay.
It's by, Sabri Subi. He's like an Australian marketer guy.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff in there is stuff that you've seen done a lot online, and some of it's more geared towards people doing consulting services. But there's a lot of good practical advice in there about how to write clickbait and stuff like that.
It's good to know.
The main takeaway for me was just the realization that, like, yes, I do need to take marketing seriously, and it really doesn't matter if I make the best thing if nobody knows about it.
Very good. The fact that you even acknowledge that puts you in the top 5% of All people. One thing I was going to say also for people who are interested in reading about marketing, a book I always recommend is this book by Bill Davidow, Davidow, and he was the CMO for Intel when Intel was like basically just god tier, so like kind of early Intel. And he was an electrical engineer and worked at Intel as a chip engineer, of course, and then basically had that same realization where, you know, it doesn't really matter what you do if no one buys it, if no one, you know, knows about it. And he also realized that the marketing was driving what engineering projects he got to work on. So he's kind of like, oh, the marketing is actually upstream of what I'm doing. And so he kind of like went back and relearned how to be, you know, a marketing executive after already being an electrical engineer. So it's really, really good. It's called Marketing High Technology. And it's really good, especially for engineers, because it kind of like goes through the rationale about why this stuff's important. So I'd highly recommend that to everybody. And then another one about sales in particular, which I really like, is there's a book by Jordan Belfort, which is the guy that Wolf of Wall Street was based off of. And it's called Way of the Wolf, and it's just a really, really solid sales book. And it's also very entertaining. But that stuff's like, yeah, super important. Whether you like it or not, you know, you're not interested in sales, but sales is interested in you, type thing. Anybody else?
Oftentimes with these kind of books, they like stay in super high level concept stage and they never give any solid advice. And I often feel like I'm done reading the book and I've already forgotten what I read from the first 12 chapters. Like it's hard for me to.
I agree.
That's where your network of mentors comes in. Like seriously, it's like the calling people thing. You know, call everyone, talk to everyone. I think that's how you like. It's kind of like, you know, learning a language or something. Like it needs to become immersive somehow. Otherwise, it's really just sort of useless background. I think.
And I forgot to say, Minder Folder is also. He does sales training, and he has. And if you're interested and you're on Urbit, as he's of course will provide a lot of that insight to you. So I highly recommend reaching out to him if you have specific questions, especially about like specific sort of real world examples. But yeah, talk to people. And Urbit is many things, but one of the things it is a very open network of people to ask questions to. So people are usually willing to help out with that stuff for sure. Okay, well, we're over time here, so I just want to give one final shout out here to Turf on Urbit, to midlev-mindyr. If you're going to want to do a play test of this new software, which is running, and he's trying to like work out the kinks, I think he'd really appreciate that. I think did you tweet out the?
There's a link, and I think there was a question about whether there's a code needed, and doesn't look like there is, right? I
posted the ID of the group, so if you join the group, you'll see instructions about how to join or how to download the app. Sarlo's in here. Mockful Winrex was in here earlier. But yeah, if you join the group, you'll see the link to install the app, and you can request a portal to my planet and hang out.
I'll retweet that as well so people can see it. Yeah, very good. So I'm going to probably start hanging out there a little bit more, and I will send you any bugs that I find. I'm sure there are a few.
Thank you. Yeah.
A few or a few, whatever. It's either one. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking. It's great talking to you. Great getting caught up. I think this is going to be really exciting. I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Yeah. Thank you for hosting.
Okay.
This is great.
Talk soon, man.
Good chat.
Right.
Take it easy.